What's up, Patreon? It's me, Lula, and I want you to be the first to know that there is not going to be a Christmas story this year. I am excited about the possibility behind Sunday and Seven, but that story's not hitting the way it needs to hit. It needs a rewrite. I'm not in love with it the way I want to be in love with it, and I'm not going to put out a book into the world that I'm not in love with. Those days of me writing like that and trying to rush a story to the finish line and then getting it out just so I could get it out and have a story out there, those days, they're over. So that's not going to happen. And I certainly don't like disappointing my readers, but if the book doesn't hit and I can't stand behind it, it's not going out. And I wanted you to hear that directly from me instead of reading about it in a long post on my website or on Patreon. But and we're 2.5 weeks away from Christmas, and that story probably needs about a good 3 weeks to a month for me to rewrite it and work it over the way it needs to be. And I don't have that kind of time. And guess why? Because we need to move on to Roberta and Lionel. There's a tight schedule for that book. It's going to cover so much ground. That's going to require some extensive research. My books that I've ordered to research that time period and that era where their love story developed, those books have already started arriving. I've already started digging into 70s and 80s New York. And since I didn't grow up in New York, I have to do a lot of research on it, and I have to talk to New Yorkers so that the story can be as real and authentic as I can get it. That story, that love story, you know what happens in Roberta and Lionel's marriage. Well, you know some of what happens in Roberta's and Lionel's marriage. That's going to require a lot of long nights of me weaving in historical facts along with the action, the suspense, the conflict and tension. And I don't want to sleep on that story. It's important that Roberta, especially for her to be a woman back in the 70s, that needs to hit all the right notes. To be educated, influential, smart, beautiful, back in that time period, because the 70s and the 80s were a weird period for black women, especially because we were going off to college, we were getting our educations. It was no longer the civil rights movement, and black women were benefiting from the work that had been done during civil rights, but they were still very much breaking free of parents and families and marriage. I mean, think about Vanessa Williams and what happened with her and the Miss America pageant and how she was treated back in the early 80s, how her crown was taken and she was humiliated so publicly. Think about Janet Jackson breaking away from her dad, breaking away from her older brothers and the Jackson 5 image, and that whole cute little, girl prancing around the stage and her little afro bob. And she broke out on her own and said, no, that's not who I am. I'm in control. And so Roberta is entering a marriage, and she's entering a structure, a very formal structure, at a time when a lot of women are breaking free and they're establishing their own identity, but yet her identity is so closely tied to this wealthy heir who disrespects her. How does she deal with that? What was the buildup in the storyline behind that? In New York, what are those dynamics when you had Donald Trump, you had you had Sonny and Cher broke away from Sonny, you had Tina Turner, who had broken away from Ike and was making a name for herself. You had all these independent, smart, driven, talented women staking their own claim. Was the allure there for Roberta to do the same thing? And what was her reason for why she didn't break out on her own and leave Lionel and go out and make something for herself independently and take his money and just go? And so I am looking forward to digging into all that. The 70s and the 80s era was a very empowering era for Roberta. But of course, as you know, in a twist, Roberta does assert her independence and her agency and authority, but she does it in her own way. And so we need to get started on that, which means that doesn't leave very much time for the Christmas story this year. Again, I wish things were different. Oh, and I do want to note that you all know I went to Las Vegas. I did a signing. I did an author conference. I hung out with my friends in Las Vegas. It was a good time, but I did wind up getting sick. And for most of November and part of December, I was really dealing with my health because that took a toll on my body. And of course, health comes first. So part of the reason that I just could not give the gift of us the time that it needed is because me being sick and going to the doctor and just worrying if I was going to be okay, because there's a mental part of worrying about your own health that it's all tied together, and that definitely slows down productivity. So just rather than me having to force the story at this point just so that I can put something out, that story deserves more fanfare. It deserves more marketing and more promotion, and it deserves to have its full moment without me rushing it. So I'm just going to put it off again, and it is what it is. But we're moving on to Roberta and Lionel. There's a tight schedule for that to finish it, have it done properly, roll it out in the first quarter of 2024. So we have to move on to other things and get started with that. Anyway, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your support and for understanding. Happy holidays to you and Merry Christmas. I'll definitely be around. Because I'm gonna be sharing my research from all these books with you and what's going on. But I felt like for me to break that news to you, you needed to hear it from me and see my face telling you directly as opposed to reading it in a post. I hope you and your families are well. I'm wishing you all the blessings and all the joy. And until next time, see you soon.